believe that the world today faces an insurmountable challenge. How are we going to get, energy to the world's 7 billion people without negatively impacting the environment? It's tough, and this is where the world is today. This is where the world is today. So there are 1 billion people in the world that don't have access to electricity. So imagine when you go to bed at night, looking around you and all you see is complete darkness. That's the reality for these people. Energy demand in the next 30 years is going to grow by 56%, and 80% of that is going to be from fossil fuels. Last week, Harbin, an industrial city in China, had to shut down its airports and roads because smog from fossil fuels from coal-fired power plants made it impossible to see. So the particulate matter in the air exceeded the healthy limit by 40 times. And this year, for the first time in 3 million years, we hit 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. That's only 50 million away from the limit that scientists argue is the point of irreversible damage for our climate. What's more is that this 450 parts per million limit will be reached within the next 15 to 20 years with the current growth projections. Glaciers have also melted at record pace. This is a time-lapse picture of a glacier in Alaska in 2006, and then in 2012. Notice the difference in just 6 years. And extreme weather events like the one that's happening right now today in the Philippines, and this one that hit New York and New Jersey, Hurricane Sandy, last year. And this flood that hit my hometown, Calgary, this summer and caused me to relocate for 3 weeks. These events are going to be more and more common. And in the future, there will be 1 billion climate refugees out there, like this man from the Kiribati Islands who is currently in court seeking refugee status, not because he can't go home because of civil war. No, it's because rising sea levels have made his home too dangerous to return to. And if he succeeds in court today or this week, then he'll be the first ever documented climate refugee. It's pretty scary. So that's the world today, and it's not pretty. But I'm not here to make you all depressed. I'm here to tell you how you can change this picture, how you can change the writing on the wall, how every single one of you in this room can be a change maker. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So, what's a change maker? Well, a change maker is someone, an individual, who's doing something big or small to make the world a better place. And the thing here to stress is that it is action. You have to be actively doing something to be a change maker. Now, that action can be big or small. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. So the teacher who is teaching children or the classroom about the importance of the environment is just as important as that policymaker who is writing the next big climate treaty. This is because if every person on this planet did what they could within their means to make the world a better place, then it would be, well, a better place. So that's what a change maker is. But it's not important, or it's not enough for me to just stand here and tell you what it is. So I'm also going to teach you how to become one. And I have 3 words. I'm going to hammer it into you the entire talk. Educate, inspire, unite. These 3 words are so important because if you have all 3, you can make positive change. You can change the world. Anyone can be a change maker if they educate themselves on the topic, be inspired to make a difference, and unite with like-minded people to act. This educate, inspire, unite framework is just one approach the world can use to empower every person to solve the world's toughest problems, with climate change and energy being just 2 of them. So let's break it down and define each one. But before I do that, I want to start with a caveat that this isn't a process. There's no particular order to this. Think about this as 3 pillars of change. You need all 3 for this to work. So educate. Let's start with that. So educate means deeply understanding the issue that you are tackling. If you're going to challenge a status quo, you first need to know what the status quo is. So a great place to start is through textbooks. But it goes far beyond that. So you need to understand both the theoretical and the practical. You need to understand what's going on in the world and who's already doing something to solve it. But it's not just what one group is doing. You have to understand all perspectives too, even the ones that are uncomfortable to you and that you don't necessarily agree with. That's where real change happens. But that was only part one of the equation. The second one is inspire. So think of inspiration as internal motivation. Everyone has that one aha moment that forces them to change something about themselves. So this could be, say, a documentary that you watch that motivates you to eat more healthy. Or maybe you meet someone that motivates you to be a better person. Inspiration comes in many different forms, but ultimately it drives you to do what you do. It's the fuel for your passion. So that's the second part of the equation. Now the last is unite. Unite means to surround yourself with people that are driven towards the same goal as you. So if you're going to tackle the world's toughest problems, you're not going to be able to do it alone. So that's why you need to surround yourself with people that'll be there, that'll catch you when you fall, pick you back up again, and remind you when things are really tough why you're doing this in the first place. Being united means being with other people that are driven towards the same thing, that are exactly like you and want to see that same change and will help you along the way. So, to be a change maker, you need to be educated on the topic, be inspired to make a difference, and unite with like-minded people to act. So I'm now going to bring this theory closer to home and show you how this educate, inspire framework got me to where I am today and how I came to learn it for myself. So when I was younger, the age that many of you are in this room, I recycled, I tried to drive less, but I wasn't exactly an environmentalist. That was about the extent of it. But when I was in second year of university, I watched a documentary that many of you probably know or watched. It's called An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. So this was my aha moment. I watched this documentary and it inspired me to do something about climate change and energy because I realized that climate change is a really big problem that our generation, my generation, faces, and that our current use of energy is just not sustainable. So I wanted to do something. I was inspired to do something. But I was studying accounting at the time, of business, something that's not related to the hard sciences. I knew nothing about science and energy. So instead of changing my major, I decided that I would educate myself in my free time. So I spent all of my free hours reading books, blogs, anything that I can get my hands on that was related to climate change, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, all of that. And so after months and months of reading, I realized that I was just by myself. I wanted to meet other people that were equally as passionate about this as I was, so I can learn from them and share experiences. So this was in 2007. And at the time, there were many international conferences on energy, but they only had youth programs as an afterthought. I wanted to see a conference that had a broad range of topics, that focused just on students, and didn't assume expert-level knowledge before going in. And equally as important, I wanted to meet students that were just like myself, so I can share perspectives and learn about what they were experiencing on the other side of the world. And finally, if it was going to be my generation that was going to face the consequences of climate change, well, I wanted to have a platform that we could facilitate dialogue with current leaders and future leaders. So in 2007, this didn't exist. Luckily, I wasn't the only one that wanted this, though. So there's a few students at the University of Calgary, which is where I'm from, and we created it. We created what was called the International Student Energy Summit, or ISIS for short. So the ISIS, it was the first of its kind. It was a student-focused conference on energy, just on energy, and portrayed a wide variety of energy topics from an unbiased perspective. But this wasn't easy. Doing something for the first time wasn't easy, and at the scale that we wanted it. So my co-chair and I often joked that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So for example, we started our sponsorship campaign the day that JP Morgan collapsed and was in the midst of the financial crisis. Two months before the actual conference, the H1N1 pandemic hit, and Canada was blacklisted, and so we lost all our Asian delegates. We were threatened with a lawsuit. We had to change our name and our branding from scratch. And we even had an advisory board member tell us that he didn't think that we could pull it off. But luckily, he told us after the event and not before. Yes, but many obstacles. But ultimately, though, we overcame them because we were inspired to make this happen, and we were united. So it was a success. In 2009, we hosted the first ever International Student Energy Summit in Calgary, Canada. We brought together about 350 delegates from 30 different countries, and we raised close to $500,000, even in the midst of the financial crisis. If there's a will, there's a way. We had lots of interactive programming, debates, and case competitions. So we wanted to try it again 2 years later to make sure that it wasn't a fluke. We did it in Vancouver, in Canada, and again, it was a success. We brought together about 300 students from 35 different countries, and we had well-known speakers such as Dr. Pachari, who's the head of the IPCC of the UN. And finally, we had our last one, our biggest one yet, just this year, this time taking it international to Trondheim, Norway. It brought together about 500 students from 64 different countries, and lots of great speakers too, international. But it didn't end there. So 2 years ago, we knew we were onto something. Myself and two other people who were instrumental to creating the ISISs created an organization, a nonprofit, called Student Energy. So Student Energy's goal is empowering the next generation of leaders to facilitate the transition towards a sustainable energy future. Today, our organization has a broad reach of about 25,000 students in our network. We have 3 full-time employees, 30 volunteers spanning 13 time zones. And we have multiple programs, with the International Student Energy Summit being one of them. Now, ultimately, though, our organization is in the business of making change makers. We believe that everyone can be a change maker if they educate themselves on the issues, be inspired to make a difference, and unite with like-minded people to act. So this is why we think that by giving opportunities that students can educate, inspire, and unite students on like-minded topics, we're turning everyone in our network into a change maker. So when we look across our network, we can already see how this is happening. And in this Educate, Inspire framework is creating positive change. For example, this is Manuel, who's a 26-year-old change maker in Mexico. So in Mexico, there are 3 million people that don't have access to electricity. And this is something that he wanted to change. So he educated himself at the University of Mexico. He studied industrial engineering and product design for the bottom of the pyramid. It was here that he also helped create a patented technology, a charge controller for solar panels. I met him at the ISIS in 2009, and this is also the conference that inspired him to do something. He wanted to take his patented technology, and he wanted to use it in rural Mexico to tackle energy poverty, and that's exactly what he did. He went home, he united with a few of his peers, and he created ILA Mexico. So today, the social enterprise has installed 2,000 panels, has positively impacted 13,000 people, and he was even named to Forbes' top 30 under 30 in energy last year. This is him with one of his solar panels. Second example, this is Ryan, a change maker, 29, in Ecuador. So I first met Ryan again in 2009 at the ISIS. So Ryan first became inspired on the topic when he, in 2005, read the book Fueling the Future, which is a collection of essays on renewable energy. So this book inspired him to learn more, and so he sought out formal education through a Master's of Science program in Ecuador. And it was in this program that he was educated about the technical issues of renewable energy and also how to navigate the complex political systems in Ecuador and about financing in that area. So after he was done his work or his studies, he came back to Canada, where he struggled to find enough fundraising, and he got enough to start up his solar company. And it was at the same time that he united with a former classmate from his master's program. And together, they started a company called Radical Energy. So today, Radical Energy is working on a $220 million project right on the equator of Ecuador. So the project will create 50 megawatts of electricity. It will power 100,000 homes and offset 47,000 tons of CO2 every year. That's a change maker. So the stories that you hear today, they're wonderful, but the world needs a whole lot more. The world needs more change makers if we're going to tackle the world's toughest problems, climate change and energy just being two of them. So how are we going to do this? Again, 3 words: educate, inspire, unite. You can be a change maker if you educate yourselves on the issues, be inspired to make a difference, and unite with like-minded people to act. So now that you know this, the only obstacle standing in your way is your decision to do so. So I'm going to end you with a quote from this famous change maker, Gandhi. He said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Now, can you imagine what the world would be like if that happened? Thank you.